Hello, this is Neil, the art instructor at masterpaintingnow.com, and this tutorial is how to paint in Manga Studio. You can color as well, and there's several different ways of coloring. I'm not going to go over all the different ways of coloring, but we'll go over a couple different techniques of painting, and then I'll show you actual painting, using one of those techniques. So I found that my two favorite brushes in this program, and what's really cool about this program before I go into that, is that it's kind of a mix between like Photoshop and Painter, and that you can paint like Photoshop if you want. You can also paint like Painter, but they're way faster. These brushes like lightning fast. Really quick too, I'm using Manga Studio 5 EX, but the EX doesn't matter. You can just use Manga Studio 5. Now I haven't got a chance to use 4, but I have heard that 5 has improved the speed of the brushes greatly and how they work. So under water, so first you click the brush here. And then under water, there's two brushes I like a lot, and that is Paint and Apply. That's really good to lay down paint. And then also I like the transparent watercolor. I don't really like any of the oil brushes, but they're cool to throw down paint really fast. Like this brush here, it's kind of cool to throw down paint really fast with. I kind of like it for that reason, and that's pretty much it. I really like to blend with it, but if you kind of like that Photoshop thing, you can kind of use that. And then some of the indie inks are okay, but mainly I use the watercolor. Now, under pencil, I find that go down here to colored pencil, and this is really good for like if you want to do pick size 80 real fast here. This is really cool if you want to do let's say I'm gonna make sure pen pressure is off. It comes default on. Just click that button and to turn it off. To do like texture on stuff. Let's go ahead and zoom in here a bit, so you can lay down some color here really quick with it. And painting with this brush, I'm not worried about going outside the lines, so I can erase really easy. Painting with this brush is a lot like painting with Photoshop. And you grab the color with Alt key and just lightly go over it again. Grab this color, lightly go over it again. Take a light color. And so I think it adds a really cool effect. And if you like that, feeling of painting in Photoshop, and this brush is really good for that. Add a little bit of red. Oops. And then maybe even a little bit of this kind of blue. Then there's this little transparent box down here in the color, and this is awesome. I wish Photoshop had this. You click that right there. Now, a lot of you have known me to paint in Photoshop. All my tutorials are in Photoshop. Only recently have I decided to try Manga Studio, and I have to say I love it. That's all I use now. I only use Photoshop for like photo correcting and stuff. For all my drawing and painting and inking, all Manga Studio. It's just freaking a powerhouse. It's awesome. It's so much quicker and faster. I just love it. So I'm going to go a little bit about also color palettes and skin color and stuff like that as well. So we're going to go over a few things in this lesson here. Right. So let's go ahead and erase that real quick. That's one way to paint. Then let's go ahead and do like an egg type shape over here. So here's a color palette I got. And I just found this online really quick and find it useful. So these are the core colors you start with. So you have like this I think this is like a burnt sienna or something. It's kind of a yellowish brown color, this blue color, this kind of blue color, this color here, this red color. When you mix this color and like a lighter color, you get like this pink color. Mix those together and that together, you get this kind of grayish color for gray midtones. And so anyway, that goes into color theory. I'm not going to get into that, but you can take any color palette you want really, and if you just stick to those colors and use those raw colors and try not to mix too much, you're going to come out with a pretty nice end result. With skin tones, you typically start with something like this, or something even darker, and even darker like this. Typically, even midtones are quite dark on a person, and that's a problem with people when they first start painting, especially digitally, is they tend to use too light of a color. Even if you're out in the nice bright sun, your skin never gets like super, super bright. And so a good way to test like where it shows up on this color wheel is to take some photographs and then color sample from them, and then you'll see that around the color range you'll get within this area here, like how light or dark it'll be and how saturated it'll be, and make sure you get photos from some from studio, some from outside, and so forth. Right. So let's go ahead and draw this egg really quick here with this color. Just applying a little bit of pressure, and you get some nice dark tone here. Take the lighter color and you use Alt to pick up the color just like in Photoshop. lightly, very lightly, just touch and hit the colors. And just kind of blend that in really quick, like so. Let's take this kind of pinkish color here, hit this edge. You know, because skin is really a lot of different colors. It's not just one color. Hit a little bit of this color here for this down part. Take this brown for some shadow. Every time I'm picking a color, and like when I pick color over here, you see my icon switch to color picker. All I'm doing is holding down the Alt key. Then I just throw a few strokes in there. Add some red, because the transition from dark to light, that transition area, that's where you get the warmest color. And I'm going to take this kind of blue color here. It's kind of lighter color since I have warm shadows. And that's the technique if you wanted to paint with this color pencil brush. I think it really closely resembles painting in Photoshop, and I really like how it has a lot of texture to it. But if you want it to be really smooth, there's all kind of smoothing brushes. This Blur by Fiber I find really awesome. Now all this doesn't add any color down. All this does is blur. You can add a little bit of texture by going back and forth like that, if you want to keep some texture, but also you can blend all this together, and it kind of, you know, this brush here makes it to where when you're blending it together, you do little circles, really light circles like this. It actually keeps some of the texture in there, and so I kind of like that about this blur brush. There's other ones too, like Fingertip. I'll use a bigger brush here. You gotta be really careful with it though. It's more like push colors around. This is great to like make fire with, you know. You have the blur and blend. So blend's kind of cool, but notice how soft it gets everything. See, it just removes all kind of, you have to, now you have to go back in and add any sort of texture and hard lines again. Whereas I really like blending with the Blur by Fiber. There's also Soothing Watercolor. I want to try something different here. That can add a little bit of texture. Again, Blur by Fiber kind of go back and forth like this to add some texture, some lines. And then kind of come in with some circles. And blend the colors together with little circles. And kind of flow with the shape you're going with. And notice that almost adds a skin texture to it, so it's a really cool technique. Right, so let's go to the watercolor here, paint and apply. And let's go ahead and try this oil real quick. I'm going to turn the amount of paint down a little bit. You can change all kinds of stuff. Let's start with that same color again. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the line layer for now. Take a lighter color. Now with this brush works a little differently. It's like you can't really do the whole Photoshop thing. It doesn't quite work as well. It works more like a real paint, like you're actually throwing down real paint. That's more what it works like. Like oil painting. And whenever, I don't know if you've worked with oils before, but if you throw down a little bit of color and then try to color next to it, it's still wet. So it has that wet feeling to it. And notice how different it is. It's very different, and I personally don't like it. This one here is a little bit easier to work with, but I'm going to turn off pin pressure, because whenever you paint, you usually don't want pin pressure on. And this is like if you really wanted to just throw down some nice, you know, some painterly lines. Like that, and then you can come in and you can blend. So this is another technique you can use where you can lay down your main colors and then come back in and use a blending technique with whatever blending tool you want. This is one blending tool you can use. I really like this one because it leaves a lot of the texture there. And so notice how you can quickly still get a very similar result. I'm going to pull these colors up together by pulling and then pulling the strokes in the direction I want the colors to go. Doing little soft circles, just lightly touching it. It takes some practice to get to the point where you can blend this together, but that gives you you know, slightly different result, and then you can go back and add more color to it too. Let's say I want to add a little bit more of that color in there, and we want to add a little bit more of this peach in here, maybe a little bit more of the yellow as well, maybe even more yellow. And then we're going to take our blending tool again, just slightly blend this together. Alright, so this is one technique you can use. I personally don't like using that technique. I've never been fond of it, so I don't use it. You can also blend with, go to here and go to watercolor, and you can actually blend with the transparent watercolor tool. This tool actually blends really nicely, but it blends the color you're using as well. So you got to pick a color. So it's kind of like a mix between Painter and Photoshop. You pick a color. If you press hard, you get the color hard. You press lightly, it just lightly puts that color on and it blends what's around. And so you pick the color right here they want to blend, and just lightly blend. And it's a really nice mix between like the Photoshop feel and the Painter X feel. Or I should just say Painter in general. There's many different versions of it. Like that, and then you can go back in and go, okay, you know, I really like that particular You can also blend with not the blurred edge. I think this one here, if I recall correctly, this one. You kind of blend with this one and get some texture. Little circles. But it's not as much texture as the other brush. So then going back to this one here to blend, you can add texture back in. Throw some lines first like that, and come in and kind of blend it out. Now, I personally like doing that because I like getting that, you know, that nice look. But if you just want a nice smooth look and you want to add texture in another way, you can do that too. And I find what works really good is this transparent watercolor brush. But again, this one is cool. The paint and apply is cool too. Let's go ahead and make another like so. It gives you a much more blurry look. And if that's the look you like, you can easily achieve it with this brush. Right, so that's good for like getting really soft skin. Then you come in, you can add texture to the skin, whatever preferred method that you like. So you can come back here with this brush here, for example, and you can add some texture to it. You can also use texture type things over here that are really cool, and overlap it on another layer. We'll get into that. Right, so as you can see, get a textured look. You can add that texture into it if you wanted to. And personally, I like having texture, but anyway, let's do one more quick demonstration here before we start coloring the figure over there. This one here, I like the look of this one when you use the transparent watercolor, because what you get is like a kind of a combination of texture and not texture. It's like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I like it. Use a slightly smaller brush here. Once you lay down the main thing, you can start using smaller and smaller brushes. And I pick the color, and then I start blending in with the next color next to it. Do little soft circles, works great. And so you can see, this kind of leaves a little bit of texture, but also has that smoothness to it at the same time. So all these techniques are great to use. You got to decide what brushes you want for what situation, and for certain things you might want it to look more smooth, for other things you might want to look more textured, and it's just up to you. So notice though, the skin texture, the skin colors, I'm using a lot of these colors here to make my skin, and like this one here, I'd actually add more. more color variation. Maybe go back in with the burnt sienna and just add a little bit more of that, and just like darken that color. Typically, you know, in photographs, oftentimes, you know, they'll be more, I don't want to say muddy, but that's kind of what it is, more muddy. You'll see it's more like, looks like one monochromatic tone, even though it's actually not. And that's the difficulty of photograph. You really want to get that photorealism, and you just lay down all monochromatic colors. Like, it doesn't quite look like the photograph. Why not? And it's because it's more subtle, but there are other colors in there. But you know, I like to exaggerate the color variation when painting. That way, it kind of really gives that painterly look to it. Right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that layer. Right. So one of the quickest ways to lay down color would be like with either the oil painting brush. I'm gonna pick this darker color, and this would be to lay down the the main color. No, actually, I lied. Color prints. Also, there's pastels if you want to mess with those. There's chalk, pastel, charcoal. I always like to go in whenever, like I said, whenever I'm painting, I take off all this kind of stuff because I don't want any of that. And this is good if you wanted a texture. Just to take another color and go over it, and kind of blend it together, so you get kind of a little bit of quick texture, and it's kind of a different kind of texture. This is good for like rocks and things like that, but you can also paint with it. Alright, so color pencil. Let's go ahead and lay in this color here. You can also use an ink brush to lay in your flats if you're just trying to lay in a color like here. So ink brush, make it big. And then this is to quickly, and this allows you to also, I keep the pressure sensitivity on this one though. That way you can like lightly touch and get the edges, and then bam, come in and fill really quickly. But one technique you can do though, without having to do that, is if you go back to this brush here, is if you lay in your color and you just like lightly lay it over the color like that, and then pick it, you're kind of bringing some of the background right into your color, and it's kind of good to have it right into your base color, I think, like that. Makes it just more unified with the whole paint. The whole painting looks more unified this way. All right, and then sometimes you'll take like the lighter pink colors and just add them right away where the areas they're going to be at. Like in the face, for example, let's go ahead and I'm going to go right outside the lines. It doesn't matter because I'm going to be painting over that stuff, and also I can just go and erase it if I need to. When I get over here, I'm going to go lighter and then pick that color with the color picker. What that's doing is it's adding a little bit of the sky background into her. I don't want much of it, just a little bit, and then I'm going to kind of blend it together like that. And that's what I really like this transparent watercolor brush for, is you push hard and then you just push lightly, and you can just blend the colors together very quickly. Like, I'll give an example. Hard, and then just lightly touch, and you can blend that color out into the color. I can say amount of paint less, and it's now if I hit lighter, it's even easier to. Then I grab this color and just kind of blend it right over. Bam, like that. Anyway, so I know that I want a little bit of pink in her shoulders, a little bit in her breast, right in the center. Kind of blend it out, take that regular color, kind of blend into it. I want a little bit of red underneath the nose. I gotta reduce the size of the brush now. A little bit in the eyes. Take pink. A little bit of pink into the cheeks. To the neck area. Like so. So that's getting a little bit into color theory when I do that. So now I have a good solid base for my colors, and now I can go in with lights. And with lights, I can start with this and then add in blue if I wanted to. So I'm gonna have the color come from, or the light coming from the right hand side. And this is gonna get quite bright. Then take a little bit of that sky color and just kind of put it in there. I'm gonna use a much darker side, because this side is darker than that side, and the light you would think would be hitting like right here, but it's not always the case, because the roundness of the leg and the way this leg is turned, this leg is turned like more back in space, so the light's hitting it different, and the light is hitting the part that comes out here more. And this is stuff you have to think about, and if you do that incorrectly, you'll get a very different look. And I'm being careful here to not add too much light there. Maybe just a little bit, like go like a thinner brush and just lightly hit it like this. And then I'm gonna add some texture to it. I'm even gonna come here and I'm gonna blend that out now. All right, there we go. Gonna blend this in. Okay. Go back to this transparent watercolor brush. And you're already starting to kind of see, you know, some three-dimensionality here. I'm going to add some kind of grayish tones as I get up here into the belly area. There we go. Add just a little bit of red in there too. Come back with this dark color. So all that's going to be orange shadow. I'm going to pull this shadow color down all on this side here. Grab that color, and I'm grabbing now the main skin color and blending it right back into it by just lightly pushing into it. Using a smaller brush here. Really want to add a lot of color variation to the shadow there. Adding some more muted colors in some of that area there. I want to go back to that pink color. See, I want to add this into here. And then this is going to be a lot of shadow area. Not so much on this side. This side actually is going to hit more lights and actually hit right in here. But this side's going to have more shadow. I'll start with that darker, and I'm going to go ahead and blend this color in. And I really want this kind of yellow color right here. And I think I'm going to go even more goldish yellow, and I just want that right on the edge where the light's hitting. Might take some of the blue. Not that much. Just a little bit into there, as if some of the sky is affecting. That's a little too yellow. Right, so, I mean, out of context, it's kind of hard to see, but it's starting to look like what we want. Add this warm tone here. The reason why I'm adding this warm tone here is because where the shadow starts to turn over, when the shadow is turning over, that line when the shadow turns over, that's where you get your warmest line right there. Now what I want to do is I want to try to add this color and this darker color here together. And the goal is to achieve a darker version of that. And I want it even darker, so I can just, do it right here. It doesn't really matter. You know what color you're trying to achieve. There's no reason to use your palette. Just grab the color you're looking for. Okay. And then I'm going to finally take this darker color. I want it on this side as well. right? And then, you know, the socks are going to be red, so. But you don't want everything, you don't want nothing to be like a solid color. Nothing, you know, the color takes on a little bit of its background, and it takes on a little bit of what's around it, so the skin and everything like that affects it. So you don't want to, like, you know, you can tell the color's red. You know, what happens is our eyes play tricks on us, right? We see a color on something, you know, we see a painting or a picture of something, we see something that looks very, very red, but there's actually a lot of other color variations within that red that you're not able to see, because your mind just reads it as red because it goes, hey, that's red. And so that's how your mind's you know, just reads it that way. But in fact, there's a lot of color variation to it. Red, though, is one of those colors when light hits it, it does stay pretty saturated. But I still want to add a little bit of, not much, just a little bit of a brighter color. And finally, we need like a dark red color for the shadow side. I'll end up adding a little bit of probably purple or something to this, or just kind of go over it with a little bit of the pink. Down even darker. Right, so even though there's a lot of color variation here, I'll make it more saturated since it's an actual fabric. You know, and if the one thing I didn't really think about too much is, well, her knees are somewhere in here. I could have showed some of the shape of the knees with shadow and stuff through. It's like part of the top of the knee, maybe. Again, I kind of want to add just a little bit of this kind of sky tone, just very, very lightly. Alright, so we're starting to get something that looks cool, and then we can either give her dark brown boots or even black boots. Now with black, we'd have to come back in and you know, add a highlight to it. And you know, we'd get rid of the lines altogether because we're doing a painting, right? So that's just right now serving as a guide to where you're painting. Now when you do a black object, usually it's easier if you go ahead and paint the whole thing black like a silhouette. Then you come back in and you're going to add some subtle colors, and it can be kind of bluish in this case probably because, you know, we are dealing with, start with the bigger brush, we're dealing with the sky background. I like to use this brush first and just slightly add the kind of textures and stuff. Maybe go a little bit, I'm going to go smaller because just kind of showing some, you know, the wrinkles and bumps and stuff within this texture. Show that top part of the shoe here. And a little bit of the side of the shoe. And you might have a little bit, just very, very little from that side. Now I like to take my ink brush and use a brighter color. And that's when I come in and add the actual highlights. This is, and I'm going to do a little darker. This is the parts that, you know, hard and the light hit it. It's like boom, you know, light's hitting it hard. I might go a little bit brighter here for some of this to kind of show. And if you make it too sharp, you can always go back in and use a blending brush to blend it. Then maybe you can go with almost a white or actually white. Need a smaller brush for now. And that adds the glistening effect onto the boot, which looks pretty cool. And so automatically you kind of get this, you know, the leathery kind of look that you're going for. And you can go in and add more details, you know, and the more you kind of blend in and add little texture details here and there, the more realistic it's going to look. But this is a quick way to get that painterly look, as you can see. I might even go in and make her shadows. No, I think they're dark enough. The main thing is you don't want to overdo your lights and darks. Now, one little trick you can do in Manga Studio, you can also do it in Photoshop too, but is, okay, I don't know how that happened. Grab my mouse and disappeared it. There we go. So what we can do is, I'm going to collapse this part right here because we don't need it right now. Go to Layer, and then New Correction Layer. Now what this does is it makes a non-destructive layer, but yet it alters it. So we can go to Hue and Saturation, for example. I'm going to bring this over here so you can see it because it's on my other screen. And then turn the saturation all the way down, and now we get a black and white version of our painting. And put it over the layers that you want it to affect. So if you don't want it to affect, you know, that layer, then you don't put it over that layer. If you want it to affect that layer, you put it over that layer. If you want it to affect the lines, you put it over the lines as well. What this allows you to do, and you can turn this off and on, is as you're working, you can quickly see, and maybe you might want to lock it so you don't actually find yourself painting on it, but it just allows you to quickly see if you have the proper amount of contrast. And so far, I'm thinking this is, you know, pretty close to, you know, the amount of contrast I want, but I might add a little bit more to it. You know, she is in the sun, so you're not going to get a huge amount of contrast. But I might go ahead and take this color and then brighten up just a little bit over here on the left-hand side, the color picker. Always start with big brushes and then work your way down to smaller brushes. And kind of blend that together a little bit. Now if I turn this off and on, you see I have a little more contrast there. And the only other thing I might do to add a little more contrast to this is in certain areas is where I know the light doesn't have a hard time hitting, which is like in here, for example. Let's go ahead and just make that nice and dark. This side is actually hitting more with light because of the direction of the legs coming out forward toward us more. And if you want to, grab your ink brush, go down here to the very left hand side and click on that transparency icon there. So the color you're painting with is transparent, which basically turns any paintbrush that you're painting with into an eraser, which is really cool. You can also use eraser as well, but sometimes I like using ink brush as an eraser. Gives a lot of control over it. Just kind of cleaning some of that up so you can kind of see it. Then we'll be painting over with the other colors anyway. Take that same kind of mid-red color there. And we can come in here and add in the flats. And there are different ways of painting. You don't have to add in flats first if you don't want to. You know, you can use this brush here and add it in and just like push kind of hard. And what that's allow you to do is allow some of that under color to come through on certain parts. So you have different levels of hardness that you're pushing on. And this allows some of the undercolor to come through so that when you go back into paint, it looks more, you know, as if it's into the environment itself, because you would never get a full like saturated red in a blue sky environment. Switch to a smaller brush to go ahead and fill in some of this here. This is where it all gets a lot more complicated, because now it's like, well, actually, let's use a darker. I should have did it darker and then add the light. This depends. Some people like to add the dark to the light. Some people like to work the other way around, adding the light to the dark. So that's something you got to figure out that you like doing for yourself. think I need a slightly darker brush. And if you can, get block in the main. If this is a much faster way of working, is if you block in the main colors with a big brush. Block in the main idea first. Then go down and switch your brush, when you need to add certain details. And then we can take some of the sky color here, and then we'll go to really bright saturated color, because let's say she has really saturated type of clothing on, to where when the light hits it, it gets very saturated. And then we can go in and start adding some highlights to some of these wrinkles and everything. Nope, don't like any of that. Take some of that mid color here. I'm going to take some of that pure red, most saturated part. This is like the mid-tone. And the reason why I'm adding this in here is this is what the eye gravitates toward. And this gives the illusion that what we're looking at is like pure red, even though we're technically not looking at pure red. And I'm just thinking about, parts that'll be light and dark. And I'm not trying to go too much for realism right now, because that would take far too long. But I'm just showing the techniques. You can take these same techniques and then, apply it and get more realistic. The light would really be hitting these flares that are coming out. And the light would be hitting this part a lot. There's certain places you have like really, really dark darks. Under the breast is one of them. Especially on this side over here, because that's totally turned away from the light. There might be a few places in here that you have lights and darks. You might even have kind of lighten that up a little bit, but you can also go back to your color palette and add all these different colors into your painting. And that allows you to get a more unified look to your painting. Now, my typical painting style is I like to use a lot of color variation, and I like to emphasize that color variation. You don't have to do that, but I like to do that because, I don't know, I just like the look of it. I think it looks very cool when you do that. Even my comics, I like to add a lot of color variation. I use different techniques for that, but I think they work well. Right now I'm going to add a little bit of brightness to the side of her breast here and the side of this breast here, because that's, we know it's hitting. Take this kind of more yellowish color here where it's turning over. You can also go and start on a new layer if you wanted to. I'm going to take even more of a gold yellowish color. I just want to add that line in right there. If you don't like having to push a little bit harder, it should be more. You know what? I'm going to go with this more pink color for that. There we go. Anyway, if you don't want to push harder in order to get that look you're desiring, then you could use a different brush, like the pencil brush. So even though light usually always hits here, almost always hits there between the breast. Then you have the rest of it, which kind of mounds around the breast. So a little bit of dark shadow over here where the light isn't able to hit. Show the shape of that shoulder there. Light would be hitting mostly the side of it. I want to add some yellow in there. I'm going to take this color first. I want to add. I think it's good to add the color of the skin first, and then you can add, a little bit of blue highlight in there. You can take these colors here and find places like, especially in the face, where that color will be prevalent. And darker, and more of a warmer dark around the nose and the lips and the eye sockets. Right now I'm just going really big with this. What I mean by that is I'm not trying to get details and stuff yet. I'm just like, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep it big. Simple. I don't worry about details until I get to that part of the painting process. That arm over there is going to be darker all the way around. The highlight will be right, so this here is the painting process. It doesn't differ a lot. If you don't want it to differ a lot from Photoshop, it doesn't have to. So that's all up to you. If you want it to differ a lot from Photoshop, then you can easily make it differ a lot from Photoshop. If you're more used to the Painter, then bam. And it's faster than Painter. So what's really cool is if you like both Painter and Photoshop and like you like to transfer between them for different things, I'm telling you, try out Manga Studio 5 for a while. Give it a chance like I did, and you can have the best of both worlds all in one program. And it's just powerful, it's fast. I freaking love this program. I mean, there's really not much you can't do with it. And it's excellent for making comics. It makes the comic process much faster. So many cool tools. We'll go over that in some other later tutorials, lessons. So even though this is black, right, and it's hiding from the light, some light will still most likely get in there. So I'm going to take a big brush here and take it just a slightly. Let's take one of these kind of dark colors like this here, and let's take this big brush here. And it's just like slightly add it in there, just very, very lightly touch where light might be hitting. And don't to worry, if you make it too bright, you can just take the black color and just work right back over it again. Just lightly touch it. I love this brush for that reason. It just makes blending and stuff so much easier. Her arms will also be red. I'm gonna go right outside the lines. The reason why, I'm not gonna purposely go outside the lines, but I'm purposely making sure I also add some of that background color in there, because I can just go in and erase. That's not a big deal. Right away, I know this arm's going to be mostly dark anyway, so I might as well just go ahead and add that dark into it right now. Kind of registered all that as one stroke. Sometimes if you paint strokes very quickly together, it'll register them as one stroke, which is kind of convenient in a way when you hit the backspace button sometimes, but other times it's not quite what you wanted. Now, if I wanted her clothing to look more like it's what's the word I'm looking for? You know, more sheen. It's not, you know, it's more of a sheeny type material. It's not as you use the pen brush as a great easy way to add sheen into your drawing. You know, so you just take the colors and overlap them a little bit and do so with the pen brush, and that gives you a definite, you know, hard line. And it's those hard lines in this type of stuff that will really make your piece have that sheen to it. And then you might want to go in and just blend some of it out, because you know, too many hard lines, and then it starts to look less like a painting. So you got to be careful your hard line to non-hard line ratio. And in this case, I'm going to use more of this sky blue in here, which will add this, make kind of a purplish color when they mix together. And it's not like you just straight use blue in there, because that's not what's going to happen in reality, right? But you mix a little bit of blue and the red together, and sometimes, you know, the program might not mix colors correctly, and so you have to think of the color that would happen when blue hit the red. What kind of color would happen? Kind of a purplish color. So you can just go in and kind of grab a purplish color and get more pureness right in there. And you know, this is, and maybe add a little more red in there and just kind of diffuse it a bit. Doing that will give you some really interesting results, and that's what, you know, it's one of the things I found gives that painterly effect, is going in with those kinds of colors, not being afraid to use, you know, very odd colors like that. You know, even throwing greens in places you would never think to throw them. Just start throwing weird colors around. Grab all your color palette, just start grabbing it and throwing it in there, and especially in hair, and you'll see like, hey, that's kind of cool. You know, it comes out kind of neat. And then let's add some pure red back in here. We'll even make some of the highlights as more pure red first. Then we'll come back in and add lighter color. It's hitting like that flat plane there. This here is more turned under, so it's not hitting as much, but it's kind of hitting the edge there a little bit. Usually in a painting, you never use like black. You know, you never use a solid black. But you might. A little bit of that. I'm adding a little blue highlights into the shirt, and that might kind of diffuse it a little bit. It's more of a comic book thing, but it also applies in painting. Now with the eraser, I'm just gonna, you know, I'm using the pen as the eraser tool. I can also just grab the eraser tool, you know, if I want to erase too with that. But I find that I like using the pen tool when I want nice crisp lines outside. But yeah. She's actually wearing a glove in this hand and not in this hand. And then it's, you know, coming and refining and adding texture. And you can do that with all kinds of brushes. You can also do it with all these options over here. And actually I want to show you one quick thing. It's kind of neat for in this video because it's kind of long. Let's go ahead and make this solid black. We're pretty close to it. Right, like so. You can take that solid black add just a little bit more to this into it. You know, like I said, as long as like a lot of it's solid black, then people will know that the color is black. But even black is never like solid black. It has some, you know, light hits black as well. Right, so now let's go ahead and take some of these things here. We can do this, all kinds of things. Some of this is really cool for like, we want to do some quick fishnets. But a lot of these monochromatic noises and stuff, these are great, like this one here. So we're going to make sure to make a new layer for this just in case. I think it makes a new layer automatically. Yeah, it does. Okay, so we can get rid of that layer. Now to use this layer more properly, let's see here. It's kind of small, so let me see here if I can make it bigger. Well, usually it lets you move it around. I think it is letting me move it around, but it's not changing much anyway. That's not going to work really for what we want it for, so let's see. There's one called camouflage. There we go. Now watch what happens with it. This is really cool. So we're going to grab camouflage, pull it out there. We're going to turn the size down to what we need it for. Something like that there. Maybe a little bit bigger. I'm going to zoom in now so I can make sure I can see the size of it. That's going to work perfect. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this layer and selection from layer. Create selection. Now I'm going to create a new layer on top of that. And grab my pen brush here, make it huge, and fill, take a white color, and fill in this area, like so. I'm going to get rid of this layer now by deleting it. Okay, for some reason it's not letting me delete that layer. I can turn it off, why can't I delete it? This is weird. This is the first time I ran into this problem. I don't know if I still have something selected or what's going on here. It's not letting me delete that layer. That's really strange. Okay, I'm going to just turn it off then. This layer here though. I picked the wrong thing anyway. So that's kind of a bummer. Alright. What layer did I do that on? That one? We're going to get rid of that layer. And for some reason I can't get rid of this layer. Oh, do I have it locked? That's why. Okay. Oh, that's right. That's that black and white layer. Okay, never mind. Sorry about that. Got confused there. Right, so now let's take this layer here and right click and we'll do selection from layer, create selection. There we go, that's what I wanted. Now I'll create a new layer on top of her. Take big brush, paint a little bit of white in here. Can't really see it, that's alright. Let's go ahead and unselect. What's cool about this program too, to unselect, you just click that button and it's unselected. Get rid of the camouflage layer. Take this layer now. We'll set it to like screen or color dodge or glow dodge or overlay. Whatever color, you know, we can do soft light, whatever. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. And so you can see what it does is it adds this cool texture. I want to make sure. Okay, so I might have to just go ahead and leave it to normal and then just turn the opacity down. And then take the eraser. Unfortunately, it kind of covered too much of her. I needed it smaller than that, so I didn't make it quite small enough, but that's alright. You can see you can actually use that to add texture. You know, there's all kinds of textures you can use. You can do that technique I just did. There's tons of textures you can use and add textures to clothing and all kinds of stuff. It's just a really quick way to do it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just erasing here. I'm going to take my pen brush here. I want to go ahead and go to transparent before it turns into a eraser. And what this does, it makes it kind of look like lacing, you know. Let's take this brush instead, turn pin pressure back on, make it a small brush. What this allows me to do is makes it to where I won't be as dark, so it looks more like original pattern. Anyway, I would have made the pattern smaller and would have looked better. I wouldn't have to do any of this. Alright, so now it looks kind of like she has some kind of lacing on. And again, you get a better result. So as you can see, you know, she's starting to blend in with her background. We'd have to add a ground layer and stuff. But she's starting to blend in nicely and look like she's part of the scene and the scene part of her. And you can even go in and further that by adjusting her overall colors. It allows you to do that as well, kind of like Photoshop. So you grab the layer here. This one you go to edit, and you go to tonal correction is where it's at. You have brightness and contrast, hue and saturation. In this case, we want to do color balance. And then we can come in here and we go, okay, well, with the half tone, which is like mid-tone, they had to call it something different, I think, due to Photoshop. So we can add more blue, more yellow. I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow to that, but to the highlight, I'm going to add cyan. A little bit of blue. And then to the shadow, a little bit of purples, a little bit of blue. Maybe not that much. The next thing we can do, we can also add a correction layer. So you can go to Layer. This is a non-destructive layer. Hue and saturation and brightness. Unfortunately, unlike Photoshop, this doesn't have this little color picker where you can pick it and change the whole thing to a color, but that's alright. We want to go more towards a blue, like this. Turn the saturation down, or even turn the saturation up. It's up to you. Luminosity, brightness, or darkness. And then we're going to take that layer and turn it down, turn the opacity down up here. And as we turn it up, you can see, bam, we kind of blended her in more immediately into the background. And she kind of looks like she more belongs into the scene, but you can still see the colors are distinctive. Another way to do it is like just right on the painter layer itself. One trick you can do up here, like in Photoshop, there's a lock transparency, which is this one here. You click that, it locks the transparency pixels, and now only where I painted will I be able to paint right now. So let's go ahead and grab some of this background color here. I can just kind of paint all right into it. And bam, you know, just it adds it right into the, like as if you're adding environment all the way around into her, and she kind of just blends more right into the painting. Another thing good about using that transparency lock is if you go in real quick and add your flats, hit the transparency lock, you won't be able to paint outside of the lines. So that's kind of a cool thing to do, and it can save you some time so you don't have to go back and erase. Just make sure when you need to erase and stuff, you turn it back off again. So you can come back in here and erase, go around the edges and get rid of where you went outside the lines. So I left some texture in there, but that looks kind of cool. So see all the color variation I have in here, and that's what really gives you that kind of painterly look. Now you don't have to go that overboard. You can really go back in it and like more flesh it all out with a color, and that's really easy to do. You can do that with a tonal correction layer as well, but just mask it out, and add more of a skin tone here, and then set it over and set it to soft light, or just leave it normal and turn the opacity down until you get that kind of in between of a lot of color variation and not so much color variation. Now with the mouth with the face rather, is what I meant to say. Let's turn this off. I'm gonna have to use like smaller brushes here. So here we can go in. I'm not going to add true red. I'm going to lightly hit it so that some of that color that's already there stays there. And so, doing this part here just takes knowing a lot about color theory and stuff, and light and shadow. I have a lot of different, I have a whole course on that. So Might find that useful. I know some people say, you know, I see some comments and some people are like, you're starting to sound like a commercial, and I do apologize if I'm, you know, starting to sound like a commercial sometimes. I'm just mentioning, you know, like I make sure to say, hey, this is something you need to know, you know, knowledge you need to know, like it's like prerequisite knowledge, and you don't have to learn it from me, you know, you can learn from anyone. So I try to like preface it with that, by that way people don't think that I'm saying, hey, you need to buy all my other courses. You know, I'm not saying that. I'm saying some of the knowledge that you need to find in another course, whether it be my course or somebody else's course. It doesn't matter whose you find it in. You know, just make sure you find it. You know, adding that glossy light into the eye like that, make your eyes super blue. We can, you know, go ahead and diffuse that too. I really like using some like this kind of color here. That's really good to add into the transition of the nose here into this darker color. Take some of this orange, mix it into the forehead up here. You note when you start painting with a smaller brush that one thing you start to notice, at least I do. Now keep in mind, she is a comic book character, so I'm actually, you know, even though I'm painting her painterly style, she's still a comic book character. Now what that does though is it adds this kind of really cool, you know, you're like inventing something new, because there's different ways to invent style, right? One thing about style is that you have, it has to do with, you know, the way you're drawing it, more with the line work, right? But another type of style, there's a little bit of red there, a red over here. Another thing about style is where it has more to do with the color, the rendering, how you render the object. So one has to do with how you're drawing the object, so that deals with the main shapes and everything. You know, the shape of her face is more comic-like, so I have this more comic-like drawing, but the style that I'm coloring it, that I'm rendering it, is a painterly style. You know, I could draw it in a more realistic style, but then, you know, colored it in a cartoon style, and that would give me a whole different kind of effect. Anyway, so as you can see, it's coming along nicely, and this is one of those longer tutorials. Hope you don't mind. I like doing those sometimes for everyone. That way, you can learn something. You know, if I only do short tutorials, then, you know, it's harder to teach that way. Some people like it, some people don't. I can't please everyone. Do apologize for that. I really do try hard to, you know, please everyone as much as possible. Not because I'm a people pleaser, it's because my channel is to help people, and so naturally I want to try to help as many people as possible. I don't want to alienate people. I can also go in and add more skin tones to some of this. Also, you can change your brush type. So, for example, airbrush is one way to do it really quickly. You can do it with these brushes too, but you have to go into advanced settings to do it. Airbrush is already right here, the combine mode. And so I can go to like soft light, for example, and I can still use my same technique that I like using in Photoshop. And so now I can take a color like kind of a skin color. I can add all that in there, and I can also darken it up a little bit. And that's what soft light does. It kind of darkens that. We can also just use color, and color is not going to darken it up so much as it will. And also, if you use a lighter color with soft light, it lightens it up. And darker color will darken it up. Let's go and add a little bit of blue to this. It's a really quick way too to kind of add the color of all the sky and everything to your figure. And I don't know, I mean, even if it's, you know, like realistically, it's the way a face should look, that it has a lot of dark shadows on it. I usually, especially if it's like this kind of style, cross between comic and not comic, where the, you know, the drawing is comic but the painterly style is not. I like to make the shadows lighter than what they would actually be in real life. Because in real life, shadows get quite dark on the face when you have a side view of lighting like this. Let's see, I'm going to come back in and add some little highlight points here to the nose. I'm going to add a little bit more red, just lightly touching underneath the nose there. I can take my airbrush tool again here in soft light. I can add a little bit of red into the cheeks. I can use more of a pink. I don't want to darken up too much. And so there you have it. I would just continue using those same techniques and paint the rest of it, the hair and the head and everything like that. But hopefully this will help you in painting and how to achieve that painterly look in Manga Studio 5. Because I don't know if it works the same in Manga Studio 4. I think that you have the same tools in Manga Studio 4. They're just not as fast. They're not as optimized as much. But I don't know how much they improved that, because like I said, I never used that one before. But I'm going to go ahead and add some darker tone back in here where I know light when it hit. Sorry about that, that's my phone. Alright, so there's a couple more things I want to do here before we end out this video. I'm almost thinking I might as well just go ahead and do the whole thing, right? Transparency lock is on that layer there, the pen layer. I need to add some of those darker colors. A little bit of color variations in here. Long brush. And then I want to take big brush now and just kind of darken all this up here. A lot of the paintings would actually be quite dark. And there's some other places as well that would be more darker than what I have it. More darker, that's pretty lame. Grammar wise, I mean. You add some shadow here, because we'd have some drop shadow. Actually, the shadow would come out further because of this right here. Might even come down like that. You can also make a new layer for this, so you can just like turn it down. But you know, I have a pretty good level of control over the painting, so my painting style, I can still get the shadow to work kind of how I want it to. And I'm not sure why I'm not going over that layer. Is that like a separate layer or something? Is that why that is? Aha, that's what it was. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that layer. Don't know why I still don't know why I can't get rid of those. Must have linked them together. Yeah, see, I don't know. Oh, that's why I got that one locked. That was why I couldn't delete it. Okay, I remember now. That's the human saturation one. Oh, that's right. This one changes it too. Okay, cool. So the ones I don't want to accidentally delete. And also, you know, I like to click on the layer here. Oops, click the layer, select it. The color drop down here, I like using red. Red tells me black is my lines. Red is my color layer. My shadow layer, if I have a separate shadow layer, I make it purple. If I have a highlight layer, I'll make it like light blue or yellow. And you can also, and what's really cool about this, unlike in Photoshop, at least I don't think you can in Photoshop, not maybe the newer ones you can, but in CS5 you can't, and that's what I run. Go like that, make a darker, you know, brighter red, so you can pick whatever color you want. You can even pick white if you wanted to. And white could be like, you know, super, super highlight bright, or, you know, use white for like a glow dodge layer or something like that. But notice all the different color variation I have in her outfit, yet her outfit still reads as red. And it's because our brain tells us, hey, outfit's red, we know it's red, and so a lot of those other colors just kind of disappear. Now, I'm over exaggerating them. I could bring them down a lot, but same with the skin. We can tell it's skin color, but add a lot of color variation, adds that more painterly look. Let's see, guess final touch-ups then. I'll come in here with some final shadows. And lightly blend it out. And I'm not going to actually paint her hair and everything, but at least add some shadow to this side. Alright, I think that about does it for this tutorial. Hope you found it useful. And hey, do me a favor, if you found this tutorial useful, you know, although, you know, it might be a little bit long compared to a lot of other people's tutorials, and I like to offer value, and you know, I don't think you can really, if you teach super fast, it's like the person has to watch the video over and over and over again. Whereas if you teach at a speed like I do and go through a lot of information, and I'm teaching a lot of information, then I don't know, I just think it's more beneficial that way, because it you know, you learn more and you can go at a, I don't know, it's more like you're in university or something, and you're like getting a class, and it's at that speed that I think works well. But anyway, still messing around and dinking with some things here. You can really just dink forever, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, if you did find this useful, do me a big favor. Click on the share button. Share it with your favorite social network. I'd appreciate that. Because if you found it useful, I'm sure that there's some other people that would find it useful as well. Alright, so that's it for me. This is Neil, signing out.